name is Benny, and today I'm here with my group member, Jeremiah and Shu Chen, to present our presentation about Apple and how their supply chain works. Um, just some background information. Apple was founded on April 1st, 1997 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, they're the initial founders since Ronald Wayne sold most of the share of the company weeks after they founded it. They want people to have access to smaller computers so they can work in their office or at home. Moving forward, Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple in 1995. The company started going downhill after he left. Uh, he eventually came back to the company in 1997 uh, while the company was on the verge of going bankrupt. In fact, Bill Gates invested in Apple after Steve Jobs came back and gave him the opportunity to better his company. After that, Apple was able to launch multiple successful products, including the iMac in 1998, iPod in 2001, the iPhone in 2007, and the iPad in 2010. Tim Cook. Tim Cook, for those who don't know who he is, he's currently the CEO of Apple. He was actually hired in 1998 for his specialty in supply chain. He took the role of Chief Operations Officer in 2005. He became Steve Jobs' successor in 2011. After he became the successor, he implemented the just-in-time manufacturing, basically like a strategy that allows materials from suppliers to be aligned with the production schedule. Tim Cook really took the effort to enhance Apple's overall supply chain strategy. And then on the next slide, I'm going to talk about some of the strategies that he implemented. So Tim Cook wants Apple to focus on products with life cycles that exceed 12 months. He cut down storage locations, leaving only one central warehouse in California. He wanted better communication between the central warehouse, the Apple stores, and their customer. He was able to decrease the number of key suppliers to increase supplier competition. He was able to maintain long-term and strategic relationships with suppliers, outsourcing the manufacturing to China to decrease production lead time, decrease inventory for quicker inventory turnover, and lastly, he implemented renewable energy resources to cut cost. So Apple's supply chain is broken down into 5 different categories: sourcing, manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, and return. So basically, Apple sources their material from all over the world. So not just in China, they have suppliers everywhere. So after everything is gathered, um, they would assemble it in China, and then after that, Apple would drop ship pre-ordered products to their customers. The rest of the product will be shipped to the central warehouse in California, and then after that, uh, Apple will distribute the products to different store locations across the country, or carriers like T-Mobile or Verizon. In the end of the cycle, customers can recycle the product at participating recycling, sorry, I'm butchering, recycling plants and Apple stores.
So how Apple chooses their sources is mainly based on the nations that are available to produce different items, such as in the United States, they're able to create a lot of the semiconductor components for the iPhone, and places such as Taiwan and Japan are able to make the touchscreen components and the LCD panels for making the screen, while China does the battery modules and acoustic components for the iPhone, while also providing the labor.
Tim Cook believes that when it comes to technologies such as smartphones, tablets, and laptops, inventory deprecates very, very quickly, losing 1 to 2% of value each week. So a great amount of Apple's supply chain success can be attributed to them continuing to design their products in California, while leveraging the lower cost of outsourcing manufacturing to China. Is Apple's supply chain really number one? Actually, their supply chain is very risky and they have many challenges to overcome. For example, global economy could affect the company. Some resellers may also distribute products from the competing manufacturers. Inventories can become obsolete or exceed the anticipated demand. Some components are currently obtained from the single or limited sources. Some custom components are not common to the rest of the industries. Ability to obtain components in sufficient quantities is important. Supply chain disruptions such as the natural and man-made disasters can be serious. Company depends on logistical services provided by outsourcing partners. Company also relies on its partners to adhere to supplier code of conduct. Although Apple is recognized as a global leader in supply chain management, the company has received criticism for its suppliers' unethical labor practices, including child labor, workers being seriously injured from repetitive motions during long shifts, and stress-related worker suicides.
Apple's supply chain globally is distributed based upon where they spend their money for things such as labor and the profits that they allow outside retailers to obtain. And as you can see in the pie chart, most of their profits are retained to their own system, while 14.5% are given to the cost of labor in China and other countries, and the profits to outside retailers. Now, what this means for Apple is that despite having all of their labor done outside of their company, a lot of their value is still retained in their own company. As you can see in this chart, value capture for an iPhone for the US is 334 for a $550 iPhone, while the labor cost given to China and otherwise is only $29. So what this means is that despite providing all of the labor, the Chinese do not obtain a large amount of the value from the iPhone. And what this means is that even if they have representative items in China, such as education, that I'll get into later in this presentation, they do not give an appropriate share for the amount of labor that they do, which leads to a ethical dilemma between the amount that you should give back and how you should give back to those that are in your supply chain.
Apple responded to a media outcry about their labor rights and working conditions by implementing and enforcing a supplier code of conduct. Apple also promised to fight workers' abuse and withhold high standards to better their overall practice. How did Apple respond? Educate employees and supplier employees about workplace safety and international labor standards and laws. Fund programs such as Apple Environmental Health and Safety Academy train and educate supplier managers. Gave supplier employees the ability to contact the Apple Supplier Responsibility Team directly. Apple sent inspectors to supplier work sites to ensure all regulations are being followed. code of conduct violations could jeopardize supplier business relationships with Apple. Apple reviewed 156 of their key suppliers to maintain transparent with their customers. This is Apple's supplier code of conduct, which commits to the highest standards of social and environmental responsibility and ethical practices.
Some of these practices that were implemented were based upon earlier complaints that they received in the media, such as child labor and overworking of people in China and other countries. And some of the reforms that are highlighted are working hours limited to 60 per week, no involuntary labor, no underage labor, allowing for unions, access to vocational education to allow their workers to receive higher paying jobs both within their corporation and outside by providing them real, not only the work experience that they have, but also more so they can work higher up in the company later on. However, as I pointed out earlier, the value retained in China for providing uh, all of the labor costs, which a lot of these reforms were made for the Chinese laborers and laborers in other such countries, are very minute compared to the amount of profits that Apple is still able to retain in their supply chain.
How Apple's supply chain is impacting the environment. Apple is striving to reduce the amount of waste that their supply chain creates. So in 2013, Apple was able to establish the Clean Water Program to help suppliers decrease the amount of water usage. They reuse water if possible and limit the amount of fresh water usage. In 2015, Apple created the Zero Waste Program to strive towards zero waste. Lastly, they are trying to reduce carbon emissions and promote clean energy. So these are just some things that Apple is trying to do to reduce the waste they're delivering into the environment.